So I became a Christian when I was about 16, so a little bit younger in life. I grew up in a Christian home, so my mum and dad, they took me to church every week. But then from about the age of 8, my mum and dad, they split up. So my mum took me, my 3 older siblings to go live, and we lived on a council estate, and it was a bit of a rough estate, if I'm honest, all sorts of stuff going on that you don't really want to be exposed to. And I would say probably a year into that, we just kind of dwindled and kind of stopped going to church. And then, yeah, I just saw my older siblings all getting into trouble and mischief, just the stuff going on in the estates. And I remember as a young person thinking, well, this is what I want to do. Your life's always going to go where you want it to head to. And probably as a young age, just getting into all sorts of stuff that I shouldn't have really been getting into, kind of drinking and doing drugs, at times doing quite heavier drugs as well. And this is all kind of at the age of 14, 15, getting into a relationship that just got far too intense, far too quickly. I was living my life, trying to have a good time, but then on the Monday, I was just feeling quite low, and I feel like actually I might have a good time at the weekend, but there's no real substance, there's no real life in this. So my brother was like much further into all this stuff and was quite unhappy, quite depressed, in a bit of a dark place, if I'm honest. And through a series of events, he became a Christian. He gave his life to Jesus. So he kind of went from being really unhappy, quite depressed at times, quite dark place, to genuinely being really happy. And I remember kind of looking at him and thinking, well, this can't be real. How can you just flick a switch and go from one thing to the other? I was a bit anti-God at the time, so I was really, really skeptical. And he, every time I saw him, he was telling me about Jesus, but I was just kind of waiting for him to fall back into old habits. But he didn't. There was a genuine transformation. It probably took me about 6 months of my life to realise, the change in my brother's life was real. You can't just wake up one morning and decide, oh, I'm going to be happy. But honestly, he had life, he had joy. And I remember there was one night specifically, I was on a night out and there was this girl, she was a bit unhappy. And I remember trying to console her, and my advice to her was, you should become a Christian. Because my brother's become a Christian and his life has just gone from, depressed to generally full of life. The penny dropped in that moment. It was like, goodness, I'm recommending other people should give their life to Jesus. Maybe it's something that I should do. I went home that night and my brother had told me that, I needed to ask God to come into my life. I needed to say sorry for all the wrong things that I'd done. So I literally did that. I was sat on my bed and I said, God, if you're real, I want you to come into my life. And I said sorry for all the things that I could think of that I'd ever done wrong. In that moment, I just had a supernatural experience by myself in my room. I felt like a weight had just been lifted off my shoulder. I felt life for the first time. I felt love for the first time. I kind of started going to church. My life from that moment was just, the first few years, I was just buzzing, to be honest. There was a joy and there was a love and there was a peace. And me and my brother, we'd continue going out, work in progress, of course. And we remember we wouldn't drink, we wouldn't do any drugs, and people would come over to us and be convinced, you must be on something, you must be on something. We're like, no, it's Jesus. I'm 24 years in now, and one thing I can say, that the peace of God has gone with me the whole time. So I thank God really for where my life has got to in this point. If I hadn't come to faith, I wouldn't have gone to Bible college, I wouldn't have met my wife, I wouldn't have had my 3 children. And all along that journey, there's been real battles, there's been real struggles, but I think the thing that really keeps me in my faith is the fact that I get to walk with a peace. Regardless of the situation, you're able to kind of, you've got God with you and you're able to walk with a sense of peace, a sense of purpose. And I don't know why you're here today, but let me encourage you, God loves you. He wants to be a part of your world. He wants to be in your life. He wants to walk with you, give you strength, give you peace. And I just encourage you in this moment today, why don't you respond to him?